So at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus talks about two different ways that we can respond to all of his teachings. He says we can put them into practice, or we can not put them into practice. And to illustrate this, he tells a very famous story about two guys who are building houses. The man who hears Jesus' teachings and puts them into practice, he's like a guy who built his house on a foundation of rock, very solid. When the storm comes, the house stands. The guy who hears Jesus' teachings and fails to put them into practice, he's like a guy who builds his house on a foundation of sand. When the storm comes, the wind blows, the entire thing crumbles. So the question is, when the pressure's on, whose faith is going to stand up? The goal of Jesus' teachings is probably faith, but Jesus says that the path to faith isn't just listening to the lecture, it's putting it into action. Action is the path to faith. There is no faith apart from faithfulness. It's kind of like the human physiologist, the expert in anatomy, who thinks he can run a marathon just because he really understands how the human body works. There is a big difference between knowing how to do something and having the capacity to do something. And so too, if we've never, say, practiced forgiveness, and suddenly somebody treats us really badly, well, we're not going to have any capacity to forgive that person. We're going to be overcome with a sense of outrage. We're not going to love our enemy. We're not going to bless our attacker. And in the same way, if we've never trusted the Lord by being generous with our money, then if we suddenly lose our job and the bills are piling up in a scary way, we're not going to have the trust to be at peace. And our lack of trust might make us miss the ways that the Lord is providing for us. If you don't exercise your faith, then you're not going to have much capacity for faith when the moment comes. So we might ask, what stops us from practicing the Jesus teachings? And you could list fear, doubt, pride, but I think Jesus is pointing to one additional thing. He says that we might actually have the wrong idea about what constitutes the life of faith. Are we defined by what we believe? Or are we defined by the beliefs that we put into action? We might well ask, what are the teachings that Jesus is referring to in all of this? At the end of the Sermon on the Mount, what have we come to understand? And then what shall we do about it? What are some good steps we can take to solidify our foundations of faith?